You won't believe this, but I knew I wasn't wanted as soon as I could think. Not in a loud, overt manner, no one ever shouted it aloud, but rather in subtle ways that were more profound. For example, when my twin sister Allison entered a room, my mom's eyes would light up, but when I entered, they hardly flickered. For example, my dad would attend all of Allison's piano recitals, but he was unable to recall whether or not I was in the school play. I'm the other one, and my name is Emily Carter. It has always been like way. Emily and Allison. The family's pride and the golden kid is Allison. And me? There, just there. It could as well have been 5 years. Even though we were born 5 minutes apart, Mom and Dad regarded me as an extra feature they didn't request, and Allison as a gift from God. We were raised in a cozy Massachusetts suburban home. Mom was a successful real estate agent who always wore well-tailored suits while enticing customers and closing agreements. Rather than deal with the messy emotions of people, Dad, who had a small accounting firm, preferred to lose himself in spreadsheets. They both lit up, though, when it came to Allison. I can't recall the precise moment I became aware that I was invisible. Perhaps it was when we were 5 years old and Mom brought us shopping. Bright, ideal, and precisely my size, these blue sneakers had captured my heart. Mom looked at the price tag and shook her head when I pleaded for them. Too expensive, Emily. We need to save money. Even though I wasn't really sure what saving money meant at the time, I nodded. However, 10 minutes later, Mom went to another rack and got Allison a pair of brand new white Nike sneakers. I murmured, perplexed. But you said we needed to save money. Mom didn't even give me a look. Allison needs good shoes for gym class. You don't. I refrained from arguing. I persuaded myself that the cheap sneakers I was holding weren't so horrible as I merely glanced at them. But that day, something broke apart in my chest. A tiny, jagged cut. Christmas was a different matter. Allison's gift pile would grow so tall that it would obscure the Christmas tree. Mine? Off to the side, neat and humble. I received a gray pullover and a plastic doll. Allison received a professional art set, a new bike, and a Barbie dream house. As I unfurled the sweater, Dad inquired, "Do you like it?" "Yeah, I love it," I told a falsehood. However, Mom was kneeling next to Allison, arranging the ribbons in her hair and complimenting her on her beauty when I turned to face her. I was not even noticed. They did not despise me. They simply failed to notice me. Favoritism permeated every aspect of our existence. Mom took Allison to a posh salon to get her ears pierced on her 6th birthday. "I want mine done too," I added. Mom shook her head and remarked, "Emily, earrings wouldn't go with you." I asked if I might join Allison when she started ballet. "We can't afford both of you taking lessons," Mom replied. However, Allison's art, swimming, and piano lessons were always funded. I became the shadow as a result. I ceased to inquire, ceased to hope. However, it wasn't a material item that made me realize how little I cared. That was the evening I heard them discussing me. Under the light of my desk lamp, I was 12 years old and cuddled up in bed reading. I could hear my parents' voices coming up from downstairs through the opening in my door. "Do you ever think we made a mistake?" Dad asked. Mom's tone was piercing. "What do you mean?" "The kids," said Dad. "Allison is wonderful, but maybe 2 was too many." Quiet. My heart struck my ribs hard. Mom answered, "Of course," after a pause. She spoke in a chilly tone. "Allison is everything we could have hoped for in a child. But Emily, she's just there. Nothing special. Nothing. Unique." I laid there frozen, trembling all over. My chest began to burn sharply, and I was unable to breathe for a while. Feeling hated was one thing, but hearing it validated was quite another. Something inside of me altered after that night. I gave up attempting to win their affection. I gave up on hope. However, I would be special to someone if I couldn't be special to them. I poured myself into studying and going to school. I read 5 chapters if the teacher gave me 3. I submitted essays on Monday, with 5 more sources cited if they were due on Friday. I could earn success, but I couldn't earn love. The problem is that I became quite proficient at it. Teachers began to take notice of me. My English teacher said, "Emily, your analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird was brilliant." My arithmetic teacher said, Emily always demonstrates exceptional logical reasoning. I mattered to someone for the first time in my life. However, that wasn't to everyone's taste. Being the star was nothing new to Allison. Suddenly, however, the focus was on her quiet, unmemorable sister. What about Allison? She detested it, I see. One day after I took first place at the scientific fair, she remarked, "It's so boring. No one cares about stupid trophies." But she cared. I knew that. And because Allison wasn't the one with the prize, I knew Mom was also concerned, not because she was proud of me. One afternoon, following a significant exam, I placed top in the class, and the animosity boiled over. Allison's score was mediocre. At dinner that evening, Mom was unusually silent. She also strode straight into the principal's office the following day. Her voice was loud enough for half the corridor to hear her say, "Principal Dawson, I'm very concerned. The teachers here seem to have a clear bias. I can't help but notice that my daughter Allison is being treated unfairly while Emily gets all the praise." Stunned, I stood there. Dawson, the principal, was composed. "Miss S. Carter, the students' grades reflect their abilities." Mom, however, would not tolerate that. When she realized that no one was going to support Allison over objective facts, she stormed off after arguing until she was red in the face. Later, Allison narrowed her eyes and walked past me in the corridor. She muttered, "Mom won't let this go." I didn't care, though. I didn't need them since I had finally realized it. At that point, I made the decision to win something better if I couldn't gain their love. Autonomy. Achievement. I simply had no idea how far it would carry me. Following that day in the principal's office, I no longer gave a damn about their approval. What was the point, really? They would never see me the way they saw Allison, regardless of how hard I worked, how many honors I received, or how flawless my grades were. I therefore gave up attempting to win them over. I didn't give up on myself, though. I would establish my own worth if they didn't value me. At that point, I started working at a little cafe, a few blocks away from our home. It's a neighborhood place, nothing spectacular, with wooden tables that have chipped and the air smelling of burnt coffee. I began working weekends at first, but as summer arrived, I took on additional shifts. Although it wasn't much money, it belonged to me. To be honest, I was relieved that I didn't have to ask Mom for pocket money anymore because she would typically respond, "We recently got Allison a new piano. Why don't you wait till the next month?" I was just Emily at the cafe. Not Emily, Allison's sister. My name was revealed to the clients. In fact, when I went through the door, Carla, my supervisor, grinned, and I felt seen for the first time in my life. Naturally, Allison felt it was beneath me. One morning, she wrinkled her nose at my clothing and asked, "You're seriously working at a cafe? That's so pathetic." I gave a shrug. "Not all of us have a mom-sponsored life, Allison." She squinted. "Jealous much?" I simply grinned. Not even a little. The problem is that I was learning how to look after myself, while Allison was occupied with attending ballet classes and entertaining country club girls. I knew how to generate revenue. I had time management skills. I was self-sufficient and didn't require assistance from others. Naturally, though, being the favorite wasn't enough for Allison. She also needed to ensure that I remained underneath her. When I got home one afternoon from a long shift, Allison was smirking and sitting at the kitchen counter with her phone in her hand. Her fake sweet tone always made me want to strike a wall. "You might want to check Instagram," she remarked. I froze when I opened the app. She'd uploaded a photo of me wearing my cafe outfit, complete with frizzy hair and a greasy apron. The caption said, "From honor student to waitress." What a glow down. My stomach turned over. The comments were already pouring in. "Wow, Allison. I had no idea Emily was working there. Kinda embarrassing, TBE. At least you'll always have the rich sister to bail you out." I glanced at her while locking my phone. "Are you serious?" Allison grinned. "What? It's funny." I gave a headshake. "No, it's pathetic. You're pathetic." I didn't actually confront her till then. And the astonished, insulted expression on her face nearly made the embarrassment worthwhile. You can see where this is headed, but I wish I could say my parents supported me. When I told Mom, she hardly raised her head from her laptop. "It was just a joke, Emily. Don't be so sensitive." "What about Dad?" He just said, "You should be proud she posted about you at all. She has a big following." Yes, I was dealing with that type of reasoning. I didn't let it break me, though. It fueled me, if anything. I put myself into job and study. Then everything changed one day. First, there was a phone call. Mom's shrill, furious voice came through the door of her office as I was just getting home from work. "I told you, I don't need anything from you. Stop calling me." A long silence. "I built a better life without you. Don't try to crawl back in." Then there was the sound of the phone crashing. My heart was racing as I stood outside the door. My mother hardly ever lost her temper like that. Furthermore, it wasn't just work stress based on the way her voice trembled. My chest ached with curiosity. I crept inside her office after waiting until I heard her shoes clicking down the corridor. As usual, her desk was immaculate, but a tiny leather notepad was partially hidden beneath some papers. I took it out and turned it over. Phone numbers, names, business contacts, and then, close to the rear, I noticed an address. Next to the phrases, "Do not contact," it was scrawled. My stomach turned over. The address was less than half an hour away, in the town next to it. And I was able to guess who owned it very accurately. My grandparents. You see, I never heard a word about my mother's side of the family when I was growing up. No holiday calls, no photos. I once questioned why we never went to see them when I was younger. Mom said, "They're not part of our lives," in a sarcastic manner, and that's all you need to know. However, I was now aware of their location. And truthfully, I had had enough of letting my parents run my life. I chose to take the bus to that place the following day rather than going to work. I had no idea what to anticipate. An old house? Untidy yard? Rather, I discovered a spotlessly clean house with a white picket fence, a well-kept lawn, and flower beds that were so radiant they seemed to sparkle. As I approached the door and knocked, my heart pounded. An older woman responded, her lovely brown eyes widening as she took me in, her silver hair pulled back. A man with small glasses got out of a chair behind her, his face white. He said, "And you are?" I took a deep breath. "I'm Emily, Emily Carter." The woman covered her mouth with her palm as she gasped, whispering, "Oh my God," she said. "It's her, our granddaughter." The next thing I knew, I was being pulled into a warm embrace that almost made me pass out. They led me inside, seated me on a plush burgundy couch, and struck up a conversation right away. My grandmother claimed, "We never thought we'd see you," while holding my hands. "We tried to reach out, but your mother, she made it clear we weren't welcome." With my chest constricted, I questioned, "But why?" My grandfather let out a sigh. "Because your mother always wanted to be something more. She was ashamed of us." "Ashamed? We weren't rich enough," my grandmother stated. "When she married your father, she cut us off, said we'd hold her back." I balled my fists. The feeling of bitterness rose in my throat. For financial gain, my mother had wiped off a whole segment of my family. However, my grandfather gave me a small smile at that point. "Thing is, we're not exactly poor anymore." "What?" He laughed. "We invested in tech years ago. Let's just say we're comfortable now." My mouth fell open. "Wait, you're rich?" "Not that it matters," grinned my grandmother. "What matters is that you're here now." I felt at home for the first time in my life. They were only interested in me, not in my work or grades, and I came to a realization as I sat there, feeling their warmth envelop me. I was no longer dependent on my parents. I had at last located my true family, and everything was just getting started. I should have been most proud on my graduation day. And it was, in a sense, not for the reasons you may think. This was the moment I had fought so hard for. I completed every extra credit assignment, every social gathering I missed, and every late-night study session. I wanted to show to myself that I was valuable, not to please my parents anymore, that I was capable of creating a future without their consent. I felt hopeful when I got up that morning. I know I'm stupid. However, a tiny, delicate part of me wondered, perhaps this time will be different. Perhaps they will genuinely give a damn. Unfortunately, they didn't. Allison's show was there as usual, as soon as I went downstairs. While Dad stood close, tinkering with the settings on his camera, Mom fussed over her cream-colored silk dress, steaming out imagined wrinkles. "Hold still, sweetheart," You look perfect. In the meantime, I was standing in the doorway wearing a basic outfit that I had purchased from the outlet mall with my own funds. Nobody gave me a sidelong glance. I said, "Mom?" She didn't raise her head. "Mom!" Her gaze instantly swept over my entire body as she turned. "You're wearing that?" I made an effort to grin. "It's graduation, not the Met Gala." "Well, Allison's dress is from Nordstrom. Good for Allison. To be honest, it was a mistake for us to drive to the wedding together." While I sat in the back seat, unseen, Mom continued to straighten Allison's jewelry and tweak her hair during the entire drive there. The auditorium was full when we got there. It's a clamorous, muggy mess that makes your skin crawl. As I waited for my name to be called, I lined up with the other graduates. Then it took place. Valedictorian. Emily Carter. I felt the weight of that moment sink into my bones as I crossed the stage. I looked around the crowd and saw my parents. Mom scarcely gave a clap. Dad gave a courteous clap. But in a matter of seconds, both of them were concentrating on Allison, who was seated 2 rows down and using her phone to browse. The cheering soon subsided. With my certificate in hand, I left the stage and sat down. I had a hollow chest. They called Allison's name a few minutes later. Nothing extraordinary, just a typical graduate. However, my parents? Yes, people erupted as if she had just been awarded the Nobel Prize. Mom virtually yelled, "That's my girl!" and waved at Allison like she was on a parade float. My knuckles hurt from holding my diploma so tightly. A small reception was held outside the school following the ceremony. Tables with cookies and punch and white tents. Everybody was photographing their families. I watched from a distance while Mom and Dad took 100 pictures of Allison, rearranging the lighting and arranging her hair. "Emily," I pivoted. At the periphery of the gathering, my grandmother was grinning. With a little bouquet of roses in his hand, my grandfather waved from behind her. My heart grew. When I approached them, my grandmother seized me in a firm embrace before I could say anything. "We are so proud of you, honey." As he handed me the flowers, my grandfather remarked, "Congratulations, sweetheart." I grinned until my cheeks ached. "Emily!" I took a look behind me. Mom's heels clicked on the pavement as she walked toward me. Allison had already taken out her phone as she was followed by Dad. With her eyes darting to my grandparents, Mom growled, "What are they doing here?" I said. "They came to support me," in a firm voice. Mom's jaw clenched. "You should have told me. Why?" "You don't even talk to them." She squinted. "Emily, don't be rude." Allison moved forward before I could respond. "Oh my God, is that why you've been acting weird lately?" She laughed. "Are you trying to cozy up to them so you can get some money?" The smile on my grandmother's face wavered. I said, "Shut up, Allison," in a stern tone. "Relax, it's a joke." "Yeah, real hilarious." Mom yelled, "Emily, that's enough." I looked over at her. "No, Mom, it's not enough. It's never enough. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, you don't care. But the second Allison so much as breathes, you act like she's the second coming of Christ." "Emily, don't be dramatic." I gave a sour laugh. "Dramatic? This is reality, Mom." My grandparents showed up for me. They actually care. Mom's gaze grew strained. "You have a lot to learn about loyalty, young lady." I lowered my voice and walked toward her, asking, "Loyalty? You cut them off because you were embarrassed of them. But now that you know they have money, you suddenly care?" Mom's face turned white. Dad's eyes grew piercing. "What?" he inquired. I grinned and said, "Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, turns out they're not poor. They invested in tech years ago. They're pretty well off." Allison's head jerked in Mom's direction. "Wait, you told us they were poor. I didn't think it was relevant," Mom burst out. Dad's face became stern. "Lisa?" Mom's mouth moved back and forth, but she didn't make any noise. Allison murmured, "Wow," blinking. "So, they're rich?" "Allison," Mom said sharply. Allison shrugged and asked, "What? If they're rich, maybe they could help me with tuition." Stunned, I gazed at her. "Are you seriously trying to cash in on my grandparents?" "They're also my grandparents," Allison retorted. "You've never even met them!" Mom yelled. "Girls, that's enough!" Allison wasn't finished, though. "You already got your little graduation gift." she replied. Maybe they can help me too, I chuckled. A genuine, resentful chuckle. You're not entitled to anything. Allison's gaze flickered. Don't act so high and mighty, Emily. Just because you're suddenly close with them doesn't make you special. I moved in her direction. And what makes you special, Allison? Being the favorite? Allison's expression contorted. You're such a bitch, I grinned. And yet, I'm the one holding the diploma. Allison opened her mouth, but I ignored her. I approached my grandparents, who were quietly amused by the entire situation. Emily, my grandma murmured. Yeah? Let's go home. I gave a nod. We strolled in the direction of the parking lot after I put my hand in hers. I didn't bother to turn around. I didn't care what my folks thought for once. I didn't give a damn about Allison's opinion, since I was no longer the invisible twin, and I had only just begun. You would expect that things would calm down after graduation. But no, it was only getting warmer. The vacation to Hawaii was the first. A week after graduation, Mom was sitting on the couch with her laptop open and appeared strangely happy when I got home from work. Allison was relaxing close by, as usual, browsing through her phone. Mom replied, Emily, I have some news, in a voice that was almost exuding phony warmth. I left my stuff at the door and asked, Yeah? We're going to Hawaii to celebrate Allison's graduation. I went cold. We? For a half second, Mom paused. Well, your dad, Allison, and I. I waited for her to add my name as I just stared at her. She didn't. So, not me? Mom's face tensed as if I were being challenging. Emily, don't be dramatic. You have your job and someone needs to stay behind to watch the house. You mean babysit the house while you take Allison on a vacation? Mom waved her hand and remarked, It's not like you even like the beach. I yelled. It's not about the beach. It's about the fact that you're leaving me behind. Again. Dad's eyes seldom left his phone. He whispered, Emily, don't be selfish. Selfish? I asked, chuckling. Are you kidding me? You're literally taking Allison on a trip to Hawaii and leaving me here like the family dog. With a sigh, Mom brushed fictitious lint from her trousers. Emily, stop overreacting. We'll only be gone a week. A week? I asked, my voice breaking. You've got to be joking. However, Allison? She was enjoying it, I see. She said, Don't worry, sweetheart, with a tone full of sarcastic sympathy. I'll send you lots of pictures. My stomach turned over. My chest ached. Suddenly, I came to a realization. They had no intention of harming me. They simply didn't give me any thought. You know what? I asked in a firm voice. Go. Have fun. I don't care. And I didn't. Because I was aware of my position inside this household by then. When a black taxi arrived at the house the following morning, I looked from the window. The trunk was filled with Mom and Dad's bags. Wearing her high-end sunglasses, Allison stood in the driveway and took selfies. Mom smiled thinly at me as she made her way to the car. Take good care of the house, Emily, she exclaimed. Yeah, sure. Allison slid into the rear seat with a sly smile. Try not to miss us too much. The cab withdrew. Until the automobile vanished down the street, I remained at the window. Then I let out a breath. I refrained from crying. I was not depressed. I was liberated. I reached for my phone and punched in a number I had committed to memory weeks earlier. Emily? My grandmother's steady, pleasant voice said across the line. Grandma, they're gone, I said. It wasn't grief that made my voice tremble. A pause occurred. Come over, she murmured. We're throwing you a real graduation party. Without turning around, I packed a little bag and walked out of the house. I almost started crying when I got to my grandparents' place. A huge congratulations, Emily, banner and vibrant balloons adorned their lawn. A pitcher of lemonade, chips, and cupcakes were arranged on a tiny table. In an absurd apron that read Kiss the Cook, my granddad stood behind the grill. Surprise, grinned my grandmother. You didn't have to do this, I whispered, feeling my throat constricted. My grandmother answered, Of course we did, and she took my hand. You deserve to be celebrated. Tears were welling up behind my eyes, but I pushed them back. I had no intention of crying. Not right now. Then I noticed it. A silver Mercedes class, brand new, was parked at the edge of the driveway. I blinked. I said, Whose car is that? With a smile, my grandfather took a tiny key ring out of his pocket. Yours, he declared while extending the keys. I gazed at him. What? He said. It's your graduation gift. You've worked hard, Emily. We wanted to make sure you had a strong start for your future. I can't accept this. With a firm yes, you can, my grandmother said. And you will. With trembling palms, I accepted the keys. I could hardly breathe because my chest was so constricted. Thank you, I said in a whisper. I smelled the new car as I sat in the driver's seat and rubbed my hands over the leather steering wheel. This was more than just a present. It was evidence that I was noticed, that someone was interested. For the next 4 days, I stayed at my grandparents' place. Not even my phone was checked. What Mom or Allison posted didn't matter to me. I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone for the first time in my life. The black taxi, however, then pulled up in front of the house. I caught a glimpse of Mom, Dad, and Allison through the glass, their arms laden with high-end shopping bags. They appeared rejuvenated and sun-kissed. Allison was already in the driveway taking selfies. However, Mom's entire face tensed up as soon as her gaze fell upon the Mercedes in the driveway. Allison's jaw fell agape. Her voice was as harsh as glass as she screamed, "What the hell is this?" I grinned. I dangled the car keys from my finger as I went onto the porch. "Oh, this?" I remarked nonchalantly. "My graduation gift. From Grandma and Grandpa." Mom's gaze grew strained. "Slowly, Emily," she said. "Where did they get the money for this?" I grinned more broadly. "Oh, didn't you know? They invested in tech years ago. Turns out they're pretty comfortable now." Dad's head jerked in Mom's direction. "Lisa, you told me they were poor." Mom's jaw clenched. I didn't think it mattered." Dad's voice grew abrasive. "Didn't think it mattered? They bought Emily a Mercedes." Allison's eyes flashed as she rushed at me. "You got a Mercedes and didn't tell me?" "I didn't think it mattered," I repeated with a sly smile. Mom's face contorted. "Emily, sweetheart, we should talk about this. After all, they're Allison's grandparents too. Maybe they could help her out with tuition." I chuckled. "You're kidding, right?" "Emily." Mom's tone grew piercing. "Don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I asked, cocking my head. "You mean like leaving me behind while you went on vacation?" Allison folded her arms. "Mom's right. It's only fair. Why should you get a car and I don't?" I gazed at her. "Because I earned it." Allison laughed. "Oh, please. You didn't earn anything." Grinning, I said. "Didn't I? I worked hard. I got perfect grades. I got into Princeton with a full scholarship." The silence fell. Mom asked with a pale expression, "Princeton? Full scholarship," I said once again. "I leave next week." Mom stumbled like if I had struck her. You're not serious." When I said, "I'm serious," Allison's mouth moved back and forth. "You can't just leave. Watch me." Mom's face became stern. "Emily, you can't just walk away from your family." I asked, "What family?" "Because from where I'm standing, I don't have one." I slid into the driver's seat after opening the automobile door. "Emily!" exclaimed Mom. However, I simply grinned. I was driving towards something that belonged to me for the first time in my life. Furthermore, I wasn't turning around. When you understand you have nothing left to lose, it's funny how simple it is to give up. Following the Mercedes Princeton incident, I made no effort to return home. I was able to breathe in my grandparents' place, without feeling like I was taking up too much room. Mom contacted me a few times, but I ignored her calls and left them on my voicemail. The messages were just what you may have expected. "Emily, we need to talk. Emily, you need to come home. Emily, you're being unreasonable." I didn't answer. What was the purpose? Why should they care now since they didn't care while I lived there? However, Allison wasn't a fan of being kept in the dark. My phone buzzed one afternoon while I was reading and enjoying some lemonade on my grandparents' back porch. Allison had texted me. "Allison, do you really believe that you are now superior to us? Only because you were accepted into some dumb Ivy League school? Allison, remember your identity. Allison, without this family, you are nothing." After a minute of staring at the texts, I coolly blocked her number. Mom finally appeared a few days later. The doorbell rang while I was in the kitchen, assisting my grandma in baking cookies. After my grandfather responded, I heard her voice, which was controlled and incisive. Emily. I let out a sigh and used a towel to clean my hands. My grandmother said, "You don't have to see her if you don't want to." "It's fine," I replied. "Might as well get this over with." Mom was standing there in her fitted jacket and high-end heels, looking like she had stepped out of a real estate advertisement. As I arrived at the front door, her eyes were calculating, her grin stiff. Her words were, "Emily, sweetheart, can we talk?" "We're talking." She turned her eyes to the living room. "Maybe somewhere more private?" "I'm good right here." She twitched her mouth. "Emily, I know you're upset, but you need to understand that we were only trying to do what was best for you." I chuckled. What part of leaving me behind was what's best for me? The Hawaii trip? Ignoring me for 18 years? Or maybe it was the part where you told Dad you regretted having me? Her face went white. "You heard that?" "Yeah, and trust me, that was the moment I stopped trying to impress you." Mom let out a sigh and massaged her temples as if she were the victim. "Emily, you're twisting this," I retorted. "No, I'm finally seeing it for what it is. You didn't want 2 kids. You wanted a trophy, and Allison fit the part better than I did." She squinted. "Emily, don't be ridiculous. You know we love you, do you?" I asked sharply. "Because you sure didn't act like it." I interrupted her as she opened her mouth. "Let me guess you want to build the relationship now that you know Grandma and Grandpa have money?" She closed her mouth. "That's not, isn't it?" Her demeanor was deliberately blank as she gazed at me for a considerable amount of time. Then she gave a calculating, cold smile. "Emily, sweetheart, let's not fight. Family is family after all." "You only say that when you want something," I said. Her hand brushed my arm as she extended her arm. "You know, Allison's starting college soon. Maybe your grandparents could help with that too." I withdrew my arm. "You don't get it, do you?" "Emily, no," I said sharply. "Allison's not entitled to anything. And neither are you." Her expression tensed. "Emily, don't be selfish. You wouldn't even have met them if it weren't for us. Are you actually trying to take credit for that?" Her smile faded. "You don't understand how hard it is to raise 2 daughters. Sometimes things get complicated." I chuckled and said, "Complicated? Favoring one daughter over the other isn't complicated. It's shitty parenting." Her mouth twisted. "Watch your tone, Emily." I cocked my head and asked, "Or what? You'll leave me behind? Newsflash, you already did." Her eyes blinked. "Emily, you're making a mistake." "No," I replied. "I'm finally getting it right." For a time, she stood there, her eyes black with what appeared to be panic, and her mouth clenched. Then she stepped back. "Don't expect us to come running if you fail. I wouldn't expect you to." She turned and walked down the driveway to her car, though her mouth twisted as if she wanted to say something else. The silence was broken by the click of her shoes on the sidewalk. I saw her drive off while standing in the doorway. I turned back toward the kitchen as the automobile vanished down the street. Standing there with a gentle smile on her face was my grandmother. She remarked, "You handled that well, thanks." She gave me an arm pat. "You're not going to let her get to you, right?" "Nope." And I didn't. I had the best summer of my life. I spent it with my grandparents, learning my grandmother's trade secrets for cookies and assisting my grandfather with yard labor. I drove my new automobile over extended distances, with the music blaring and the windows down. Allison called a few times, but I didn't answer. I had no interest in whatever perverted sense of sisterhood she believed we shared, and my grandparents took me to Princeton in the Mercedes, on the day I was finally allowed to move in. As I opened the final box, we were standing outside my dorm. My grandmother gave me a firm embrace. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Adding, "We always knew you'd make it," my grandfather said. I mumbled, "I love you guys." Their automobile vanished down the road as I watched them drive off. I wasn't afraid of being by myself for the first time in my life. I received a text from Allison a week later. "Allison, without you, college is a little dull." After a moment of staring, I erased it. I was no longer going to be defined by my history. I wasn't Emily Carter, the girl abandoned, the shadow, or the forgotten one. My name was Emily Carter. For a period. Furthermore, I wasn't turning around.